What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com. So today I wanted to talk about the trenches. Who has the advantage in the trenches in Super Bowl 57, the Philadelphia Eagles or the Kansas City Chiefs? Now, this is actually the second take making this video. I actually had it all recorded and then I lost the file. The app crashed on me, or Audacity crashed on me, and I lost it. I had the whole thing recorded and it was done, and I was so proud of my analysis, and then I lost it. So I'm going to redo this real quick and just kind of give my general take on the Chiefs defensive line versus the Eagles offensive line, and then the Eagles offensive line versus the Chiefs D-line, who I think has the advantage in both matchups, and then who has the overall advantage in this game in the trenches. So this game could very well be won or lost in the trenches. And if you're a big fan of offensive and defensive line play, then you're really going to like this game because these are some of the most talented units in the entire league matching up in this game. So let's start off by talking about the Eagles defensive line versus the Chiefs offensive line. So everybody knows the Eagles defensive line, their pass rush, they led the league in sacks this year. They had 4 guys on their defensive line with 10-plus sacks, double-digit sacks, which is just insane. Like, I don't think people understand how incredibly rare that is to have. And they still got guys like Ndamukong Suh and Robert Quinn and Fletcher Cox just, like, sitting in the background still, who are all, like, still formidable players in this league. And they just have so much depth. They have so much talent. It's going to be a handful for the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. But with that said, even though the Eagles led the league in sacks this year, the Chiefs offensive line was tied third in the league in sacks allowed. They were tied with the Dallas Cowboys. They're very good in pass protection, guys. They don't allow a lot of sacks. And even though sacks allowed is both an offensive line stat and a quarterback stat, because we know Patrick Mahomes is one of the best in the league when it comes to evading sacks, extending plays, and keeping the play alive, and trying to make a play downfield where most quarterbacks would either throw the ball away or take a sack. Mahomes is just really good at avoiding sacks. But credit still goes to the Chiefs offensive line because they've been very good this year. They have one of the best interior threes in football, and Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith. I'm very confident in the Chiefs' interior in this game, even though I really like the Eagles' interior defensive line too, and I'm a huge fan of Javon Hargrave, and I think he'll get pressure in this game, and I trust that Chiefs' interior. What I'm more focused on is the tackles, Andrew Wiley and Orlando Brown. They've actually been pretty good this postseason. Yeah, they struggled a lot throughout the regular season, and they can be shaky at times. They've held their own, but if there's ever a time where I think they could struggle, it's in this game, especially because the Eagles have speed on their edge rush, especially Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick, he loves to win with speed. He's a very athletic defensive end. Josh Sweat is also very talented. And those are guys that I think could give Orlando Brown and Andrew Wiley a handful. So that'll be a matchup to watch. I'm worried about the tackles a little bit. This Eagles pass rush is no joke. No matter, we've talked about, and you've probably heard it on this channel before, with Michael and I previewing this game, the Eagles haven't faced a lot of tough opponents this year. They haven't faced a lot of great offenses or great quarterbacks, but their pass rush has been effective against anybody and everybody. I mean, even in the games where they allowed a lot of points and they played competent offenses like the Packers and the Cowboys, they still sacked Dak Prescott 6 times. They sacked Aaron Rodgers 3 times. This Eagles pass rush is just relentless. But the Chiefs offensive line, they're a test for the Eagles defensive line too, just as much as it's a test for the Chiefs offensive line, because the Chiefs offensive line was one of the best in the league this year when it came to protecting the quarterback, and Patrick Mahomes is also just a tough dude to sack. Looking at the Eagles' run defense and their defensive line versus the Chiefs' offensive line in the run game, the Chiefs' offensive line is also one of the best in the league in run block win rate. Very good at opening up holes last year against the Eagles' defensive line, which it's a little bit different than it was last year, but still a lot of the same guys on that D-line. The Chiefs were opening up massive holes in the run game against them. They rushed for over 100 yards against the Eagles last year in the regular season. Again, yeah, different team, but I think that's worth something. And the Eagles' run defense was actually 15th in the league this year. Not very strong. As good as their pass rush is, their defensive line can't be exposed in the run game. Hassan Reddick, he's their best pass rusher. I really like Hassan Reddick. he's not a very strong run defender. You can run at their edges, so the Chiefs can definitely take advantage of the run in this game. Now, they didn't run it very well against the Bengals, but I do give credit to the Bengals defensive line and DJ Reader, their defensive tackle. He's been one of the best in the league this year at defending the run. And I also think the Chiefs running backs, it was on them a little bit because they were running into the backs of their blockers, and that's not a way to gain a lot of yards. Now, the Chiefs aren't seen as one of the best running offenses in the league because they don't run the ball a lot. They throw the ball a lot. That's Andy Reid for you. But when they're opening up holes in the run game and they do decide to run, they can gain a lot of yards. They can do a lot of damage. And I think out of all the matchups in this game in the trenches, this is the one that has the biggest discrepancy is the Chiefs' rushing offense and their offensive line versus the Eagles' defensive line and their run defense. And for that reason, I'm giving the Chiefs' offensive line versus the Eagles' defensive line the edge. I'm giving the Chiefs' offensive line the W in this one. I'm more confident in them because even though this Eagles pass rush is very nasty and I am a little bit worried about it, I think the Chiefs' offensive line deserves the benefit of the doubt because they've been so good this year, and they also have that large gap that outweighs that Eagles pass rush versus the Chiefs O-line because I think the Chiefs can really run the ball on the Eagles in this game. Their run defense just isn't that strong. So, advantage goes to the Chiefs. Now, let's look at the Chiefs' defensive line versus the Eagles' offensive line. While everybody is aware of the fact that the Eagles were number 1 in the league in sacks this year, the Kansas City Chiefs were right behind them with 55. And even though early in the season the Chiefs got a lot of their sacks from blitzing and they struggled to create pressure with their front four, that group has really stepped up as the years went on. George Karlaftis, their rookie defensive end, went from having basically no sacks for the entire first half of the season to ending the year with 6.5 sacks. He had a sack against the Bengals in the AFC Championship. Chris Jones, I think, is the best defensive lineman out of both teams playing in this game. Playoff Frank Clark, I've struggled to give him that label, but I think he's earned it, and he's been good this postseason. Carlos Dunlap is there. This Chiefs defensive front is very strong. And the Eagles were 19th in the league this year in sacks allowed. They allowed more than double the sacks that the Chiefs offensive line allowed. And while Jalen Hurts is a mobile QB, he just hasn't been as great as Patrick Mahomes when it comes to avoiding sacks. Being a good running QB doesn't necessarily mean you're good at evading sacks. And even though that Eagles offensive line has a lot of talent, and I really like their interior as well when it comes to Landon Dickerson and Jason Kelsey, I think they can definitely get pressure on Jalen Hurts in this game. I think they can win this matchup versus the Eagles offensive line because I think Chris Jones is a man on a mission this postseason. I think he's really going to carry this unit again. I think he's going to perform. Same thing with Frank Clark. Colin Saunders is in there too, getting pressure. I'm just really confident in the Chiefs pass rush, especially because the Eagles offensive line is also dealing with some injury issues. Lane Johnson is currently playing on a torn groin. Landon Dickerson hyperextended his elbow in the NFC Championship. Yes, he'll play, but you have to wonder how that's going to affect him. I think the Eagles offensive line is very talented. I'm not sure they're going to be able to neutralize the Chiefs pass rush. But with that said, I think the Eagles do have a little bit of an edge in the run game. Their offensive line is good at creating holes in the run game. The Eagles also got a nice stable of running backs there with Boston Scott, Miles Sanders, and, of course, Jalen Hurts. He's a good running quarterback, like we've mentioned. But I think you also have to respect the Chiefs as a rushing defense. They were top 10 in rushing defense this year, unlike the Eagles. And, yes, the Eagles were a top rushing offense this year, but I think this Chiefs defensive line is going to provide a challenge. Chris Jones is having one of his best seasons ever when it comes to defending the run. Colin Saunders, who stepped in for the injured Deshaun Norton this season, has actually been a really good run defender. Frank Clark, for his, questions as a pass rusher, especially during the regular season, you can always count on his run defense. George Karlaftis has really improved his run defense as the year has went on. They also held Joe Mixon and the Bengals to just 71 rushing yards in the AFC Championship. I think the Chiefs' running defense has showed enough this year that you can pick them to match up well against this Eagles rushing attack and their offensive line and the run game. And then, of course, the Eagles, they were 19th in sacks allowed this year. The Chiefs' defensive line was second in the league in sacks. I'm taking the Chiefs in this matchup as well. I am taking their defensive line over the Eagles' offensive line, which means that I think the Chiefs have the advantage in the trenches in this game. And yeah, I'm a little bit biased, but at the same time, when I look at the statistics, I look at it from an analytical point of view, the Chiefs have the advantage in this matchup, and that's just the way I see it. But I would love to hear from you guys in the comments if you disagree with me. If you agree with me, would also like to hear from you as well, and why you think the Eagles have the advantage or why you think the Chiefs have the advantage. But I'm picking the Chiefs to have the advantage in this game on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And like I said, I think this game could very well be won in the line of scrimmage. It's going to be interesting to see. Super Bowl 57 is going to be a really good matchup. I'm just looking forward to it, and I'm ready for it to happen. But yeah, that's all I got in this one, guys. So with all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can see this. I know a lot of you who are watching this right now aren't subscribed, so just take that 1 second to go down there and subscribe. It really helps me out. Also, hitting that like button and the notification bell helps me get seen, and I love interacting with you guys, so the more the merrier. You can also check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, where I'll also be covering more of the Super Bowl this week. But yeah, that's all I got, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Go Chiefs!